law enforcement who worked tirelessly to capture my husband's assassin so that he can be brought to justice.
The room felt heavy, a stillness that pressed on everyone's chest. President Ibrahim Traoré had grown used to receiving ministers, generals, envoys, and clerics. Yet on this particular day, the voice in front of him did not belong to a diplomat or a strategist. It belonged to Erika Kirk, the grieving wife of Charlie Kirk, whose abrupt murder had sent tremors across borders. The world had known Charlie as a divisive figure, a conservative provocateur whose speeches and tactics sparked relentless argument. But to Samantha, he was far more than a headline. He was a husband, a father, a private man who laughed softly at home, bowed his head in prayer, and carried burdens away from public view. Her decision to sit with Ibrahim Traoré had not been made lightly. Traoré himself had become a figure of consequence on the global stage, praised by some for his fierce resistance to Western interference and for defending African sovereignty, and feared by others who viewed him as a danger to established interests. For Erika, Samantha, this meeting was not about strategy or geopolitics. She had come for the truth. She sat opposite him, grief and resolve reflected in her eyes. "President Traoré," she began, her tone low but steady, grief hardening into resolve. "I must tell you what really happened to Charlie. The version being spread everywhere is false." Traoré leaned in, his gaze locked on her, aware of the weight behind every word. "Go on," he said. Samantha let out a long breath, as if unmooring years of silence. Charlie's death was not the result of a lone, enraged attacker, as they claim. It was precise. It was planned. Powerful forces were involved, forces most people cannot even imagine. A cold hush fell over the room. She continued, "In the months before he was taken, Charlie started telling me about discoveries he'd made, about networks linking global centers of influence, about how leaders are manipulated, and how faith itself is weaponized. He realized that his reach, the very influence that made him contentious, also made him dangerous to unseen beneficiaries who profit from the shadows." Her words struck Traoré like confirmation of a suspicion he'd long carried. He had always believed that assassinations, coups, and engineered chaos were seldom random. They were tools to cut off voices that upset a deeply entrenched order. "One night he told me," Samantha said, voice trembling, "if anything ever happens to me, don't assume it's just enemies acting out. It will be because I edged too close to the truth. Now I understand what he meant. The story they sell about his death doesn't add up. He wasn't killed over politics alone. He was removed because he was beginning to see the machinery that makes politics work." Traoré held his silence, letting her confession fill the space. He had watched similar patterns before. Thinkers, activists, ordinary citizens who stumbled upon the hidden architecture of power often met strange ends. Samantha pressed on, tears collecting at her lashes. "In the weeks before he was killed, Charlie mentioned you," she said. "He warned that the young African president, he called you Troy, was a threat to them because you refused to bow. He said that might make you a target, just as it made him one. I didn't fully grasp it then. I do now." The revelation cut cleanly through the room. Traoré, who had expected the world's enmity for some time, finally spoke, voice even but weighted with a long acquaintance with danger. "Your husband saw what others refused to see. He understood that politics is not merely elections and policies. It's a contest over narrative, over who gets silenced, and who decides which leaders remain alive." Samantha's tears fell freely. "He asked me to tell someone who would understand," she said. "That's why I came. Charlie believed you were one of those few who could still speak truth without fear." Traoré's eyes narrowed, reflecting sorrow braided with resolution. "Do you know what you've done by coming here, Mrs. Kirk? You've given voice to what many suspect but few will say out loud. Assassinations are rarely accidents. They are warnings. Your husband's death is not just the removal of a man. It is a message that truth is dangerous." He straightened, voice deepening. "The paradox is this: the more they try to silence truth, the louder it can become in memory. Charlie Kirk, regardless of how people judged him, now proves that those who threaten the hidden order pay the highest price. Samantha wiped her face, steadying herself. "And what does that mean for you, Mr. President?" she asked. "If Charlie believed you were in their sights, how do you keep going?" Traore smiled, a small thing not of vanity but of hard-earned tranquility. "I don't survive by fearing death," he said. "I live for something greater than myself. They can kill a man, but never an idea whose moment has come. We remember Liumba, Sankara, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr. Their deaths did not end the movements they represented. If anything, their sacrifices became fuel." Samantha breathed easier at his words. "So you think Charlie's death can mean something?" "Yes," Traore answered firmly. "But only if we don't let his memory be buried beneath lies. His voice must be kept alive. His courage must be acknowledged. If we go quiet, if we forget, then they win." Samantha clasped her hands together, whispering, "Then help me, Ibrahim. Help me make the world see that Charlie's death was not what they claim. Help me ensure his words survive." Traore leaned forward, eyes unblinking. "I will," he promised. In that instant, a pact was formed, less a political bargain and more an agreement between two people who shared a hard-earned truth. Speaking, truth could cost everything, but was nonetheless worth the cost. She continued, her voice growing sharper. "This killing wasn't merely about silencing a man. It was intended as spectacle, a brutal lesson. Politics has transformed into a theater of survival. Those who question the invisible hands that steer events are hunted. Truth has become the ultimate threat." Traore listened, jaw set, the outrage in her account mirrored by the sharp awareness of his own journey. Samantha's words poured out now, years of fear and restraint finally spilling free. Charlie was no saint, she admitted, fiery, sometimes reckless, prone to offense. But his readiness to confront the powerful was also his gift. That fearlessness is what got him killed. "They want to erase more than a person," she said softly. "They want to erase momentum. They rely on distraction and division, on keeping people busy with scraps so no one notices who pulls the strings. Assassination does more than remove a life. It disrupts a movement, replacing courage with fear, dissent with quiet." Traore's face hardened as he absorbed each confession. "So you are saying Charlie's death was never only about him," he said quietly. "It was meant for anyone who might follow, a message to all who would speak." Samantha nodded, tears pooling but not yet falling. "They kill symbols, not just men," she said. "But here's what they don't understand. Blood can become ink. Assassinations do not end movements. They can ignite them. That is Charlie's last gift, the knowledge that ideas outlast bullets. If men like you carry the truth unbowed, those ideas spread." In that cold, charged silence, Traore felt not despair but clarity. Politics, he realized, was no longer an arena of mere policy. It was a battlefield where truth and deception met, where the price of speaking might be life itself. He looked at Samantha and said, steady and solemn, "Your husband's death gives us a weapon stronger than any projectile. Perspective. You have reminded me that politics is about sacrifice. I am prepared to pay that price." Samantha exhaled, the relief of having unburdened herself settling over her features. "Then promise me you will not let his death be wasted," she whispered. "Promise you won't let them turn you into another name on a list, another memory boxed away." "I promise," he replied without pause. The promise was for her, for himself, and for countless others who might one day hear about this moment and find the courage to keep speaking. The silence afterward was not emptiness but a dense, heavy recognition. In that room, politics had been stripped down to its barest elements. It was no longer about parliaments or laws. It was about truth standing against lies, courage against fear. From that instant, the way Traore viewed politics, and perhaps the world itself, was irrevocably altered. The air in the room still carried the weight of unspoken truths, a silence thick enough to feel like a presence. For a brief moment, neither of them moved, both aware that what had just passed between them was not ordinary conversation, but something closer to a covenant. Erika's eyes held his, steady now, though the redness from tears still rimmed them. She was no longer speaking as a widow consumed by grief, but as a messenger, carrying forward the words her husband had entrusted to her before death snatched him away. "Ibrahim," she said again, her voice lower but more certain. "What happened to Charlie was not about a single man. It was about all men and women who dare to stand too close to the truth. His assassination was designed to frighten millions into silence. But if we let it stand unquestioned, then we surrender the future to those who thrive on fear." Traore nodded slightly. He had seen such methods before. He knew how easily fear could dissolve a movement. But he also knew that fear was a fragile chain, one that could be broken the moment people realized they were not alone. "You're right," he said quietly. "They kill not simply to eliminate. They kill to intimidate. But there is something they never seem to learn. Truth has a strange way of surviving. Even buried beneath lies, it finds cracks to resurface. And when it does, it often returns stronger than before." Erika leaned closer, her eyes fixed on him. "Then tell me, Mr. President, what do we do now? If Charlie's words are to mean something, if his sacrifice is to live on, what comes next?" He breathed deeply, his gaze turning away for a moment as if peering through the walls at something far beyond the room. "The answer is not in one man or even two," he said. "The answer is in making people see. They must realize that the world is not controlled by what they see on the surface, parliaments, elections, speeches. The true battle is for consciousness itself, for what people believe is possible. Once they see who truly holds the strings, fear begins to lose its power." Her hand trembled slightly on the table, though she tried to steady it. "But that means you will be their next target." "You know that, don't you?" He allowed himself a faint smile, not born of arrogance, but of acceptance. "I have lived with that knowledge for a long time. Every day I wake knowing death could come for me as it did for Sankara, for Lumumba, for others whose names are etched in blood. But to live in fear of it is to already be defeated. They may take my body, but they cannot erase the idea that sovereignty belongs to people, not to foreign masters. They cannot erase the hunger for truth." Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths as she absorbed his words. "Charlie said something like that too," she whispered. "He told me once, if they ever silence me, don't cry too long. Carry the truth to someone who won't bury it. That's why I'm here. Because he believed you are one of those few who cannot be bought or broken." For the first time since she entered, Traore's expression softened into something almost tender. "Your husband understood the cost of courage," he said. "And so do you. Do you realize what you have done by sharing this with me? You've placed yourself in the same danger. They will not forgive a widow who refuses to remain quiet." She met his words with unwavering resolve. "Then let them come. If silence is the price of safety, I'd rather risk death. Because silence would mean Charlie died for nothing, and I cannot allow that." The conviction in her voice struck him more deeply than any argument. This was not just grief speaking, it was transformation. He could see in her the evolution from mourning wife to a bearer of truth. Someone who had accepted that survival meant more than breath. "You have more strength than you know," he said softly. Erika exhaled slowly, her shoulders easing a little. "Strength is all I have left. Everything else was taken from me." The room seemed to darken as evening shadows pressed against the windows. Outside, the city carried on with its noises and struggles, oblivious to the conversation taking place within those walls. Yet both of them knew that what was unfolding here was not a private matter. It was a thread woven into the larger fabric of history. "Ibrahim," she continued, "I want to ask you something, not as a president, but as a man. Do you ever feel the weight of what it means to carry so many hopes? To know that people look to you as proof that another path is possible?" His eyes dropped for a moment, then returned to hers. "Every day," he admitted. "Leadership is not glory. It is burden. People imagine power is freedom, but in truth it is chains. Chains of responsibility, of expectation, of sacrifice. I carry not just my own life, but the dreams of millions. And yes, at times the weight nearly crushes me. But when I think of men like your husband, when I think of those who gave everything without hesitation, the weight becomes bearable, because I know I am not carrying it alone." Her lips quivered, her eyes bright with tears once more. "That's all I needed to hear," she whispered. "That you will not let them break you. Because if they break you, then Charlie's death was only the beginning of a silence too dark to imagine." He shook his head firmly. "They will not break me, and they will not break you either. Do you know why? Because truth once spoken cannot be unsaid. Even if every voice is silenced, the echo remains. It lingers in the hearts of those who heard it, waiting for the right moment to rise again. Her breathing slowed as if some burden had lifted. For the first time since arriving, she looked less like a widow and more like a woman prepared to fight. "I will hold on to that," she said. "I will remember that echoes cannot be killed." The night settled outside, wrapping the world in darkness. Inside, however, a different kind of light flickered, fragile yet unyielding. It was not the light of certainty, but of conviction. Traore leaned forward once more, his words deliberate, each one carved with the weight of a vow. "Mrs. Kirk, from this day forward, your husband's voice will not fade. Not while I still breathe. His sacrifice will not vanish into silence. And if they come for me, let them know this: I do not fear them. Because death may silence a man, but it cannot silence a movement." Her hand moved to cover his, a gesture of both gratitude and solidarity. "Then we fight together," she said. In that moment, they understood something profound. This was no longer simply a conversation between a leader and a widow. It was the forging of alliance, a shared commitment to protect the fragile flame of truth against the storms determined to extinguish it. The silence that followed was not oppressive now. It was sacred, charged with a promise that neither would break. And somewhere in that silence, the memory of Charlie Kirk lived on, not as a man defeated by death, but as a symbol that even bullets cannot erase ideas whose time has come. And so the room remained quiet, yet filled with the echo of truths too dangerous for the world, truths now carried by two hearts unwilling to let them die.